In the silent spaces between man and woman lies a struggle, ancient, invisible, and unspoken. It is not a war waged with weapons, but with wills. Not a conflict of armies, but of essence. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher infamous for his bleak realism, saw this struggle clearly. And he warned us. He did not romanticize the relationship between the sexes. He stripped it bare. Beneath the poetry of love and the dreams of companionship, he saw biological tension, a design of nature that often favored one at the quiet expense of the other. According to Schopenhauer, woman is not merely the passive recipient of man's affection. She is an agent of nature, executing its cruel imperatives. Her purpose, biologically, evolutionarily, is reproduction. Her instincts are tuned not toward truth nor loyalty, but towards survival and selection. And in that process, she often thrives while men wither in their efforts to win, to provide, to protect. He observed, coldly, unapologetically, that a man, when in love, is rarely in control. His energy, his ambition, his sacrifice, all these are poured into the service of a woman's security. Yet her attraction, Schopenhauer noted, is not to his soul, but to his strength. Not to his character, but to his utility. This is not bitterness. It is a recognition of nature's agenda. A woman does not seek a weak man. She may claim to desire sensitivity, but in moments of crisis, it is strength that secures her loyalty. And here lies the contradiction. The more a man sacrifices for a woman, the less attractive he may become in her eyes. When he struggles, when he toils, when he breaks himself for her comfort, he risks becoming the very thing she instinctively avoids. A man who is no longer dominant. This is not a judgment of morality. It is biology disguised as behavior. Schopenhauer warned that women, perhaps unconsciously, flourish in the shadow of a man's labor. They do not necessarily wish for his suffering, but they benefit from the fruits of his exhaustion. And while he fights his battles, she thrives in peace. Even today, this dynamic persists, veiled behind modern language and cultural norms. Men are still expected to prove themselves, to earn love, to provide security, to justify their worth. But rarely is this struggle acknowledged. Rarely is it understood as the silent price of male existence. And when a man begins to fall, when his strength wanes, when his value in the currency of dominance and provision declines, he discovers the truth Schopenhauer tried to articulate. Affection is conditional, admiration is fleeting, and love, as nature designed it, is a transaction far more ruthless than we are taught to believe. This is not to vilify women, nor to paint them as malicious. Schopenhauer's critique was not personal, but philosophical. He saw woman as nature's instrument, beautiful, necessary, and dangerous. She is not the enemy of man, but she is not his savior either. She is the test. She is the force that exposes his weakness, the mirror that reflects his strength, the arena in which he either ascends or crumbles. And perhaps that is the deeper message, that a man must not rely on being loved, but on being unshakable, that he must not expect comfort from the very force that challenges him, that instead of seeking validation, he must seek virtue. Instead of asking for fairness, he must build fortitude. Because if it is true, as Schopenhauer believed, that women thrive on men's struggle, then the man who survives is the one who accepts this law of nature and transcends it, not with resentment, not with surrender, but with stoic clarity. He does not fight against the test. He becomes worthy of it. What if the world we live in doesn't reward effort, but illusion? What if a man's greatest mistake is believing that his suffering is seen, remembered, or valued? We are told that love is unconditional, that a man who gives, who protects, who provides, will naturally receive gratitude and loyalty in return. But this belief rarely holds up under pressure, especially not in the world Schopenhauer saw. In his view, the male's role was that of relentless striving, not for his own peace, but for the sake of others. He is the builder, the shield, the engine. Yet those he builds for often forget what he has endured. There is a cruel silence that follows male sacrifice. No parades, no praise, and often no mercy when he fails. While men are taught to suppress their pain, to carry burdens without complaint, women, by contrast, are allowed, even encouraged, to express their needs, their discomforts, their vulnerabilities. And in this social design, something dangerous occurs. The man becomes disposable. His utility becomes his identity. When he is strong, he is desired. When he is broken, he is replaced. And here is where Schopenhauer's warning cuts the deepest. Women may not consciously wish for men to struggle, but their position in the evolutionary and social hierarchy depends on male struggle. Their survival, and more than that, their prosperity, emerges from the order that men painfully maintain: a peaceful home, a stable society, a working infrastructure. Behind every one of these is male fatigue, male discipline, male self-denial. But these sacrifices are invisible, precisely because they are expected. A man who suffers quietly is a man who fulfills his role. And yet, when he collapses, emotionally, financially, physically, he often finds that the love he thought was unconditional vanishes, quickly, silently. So what is the lesson here? It is not to hate. It is not to blame. It is to wake up, to understand that your effort, your struggle, and your success must not be for recognition. They must be for you. The man who survives this world is not the one who gives endlessly, hoping for love, but the one who gives strategically, with strength, wisdom, and boundaries. He understands what Schopenhauer saw, that nature is not sentimental, that the love he seeks must begin from within, that if women thrive on men's struggle, the only man who wins is the one who struggles on his own terms. The civilization built on the backs of men, and why no one talks about it. Every monument, every empire, every system of comfort we take for granted was built on the backs of men who were never remembered. History may glorify kings, but it forgets the soldiers, the laborers, the thinkers who died unknown so that others could live more comfortably. Schopenhauer's warning wasn't just about women, it was about how nature uses man as fuel. Expendable, necessary, forgotten. A man breaks himself to build a house. He works a job he hates to feed a family he loves. He stays silent while carrying emotional burdens no one sees. And in return, he is called privileged, as if his suffering never counted. But the truth is brutal. The world needs men to suffer silently, because without their suffering, the structure collapses. Women, through no fault of their own, have learned to survive within this structure. They have learned to benefit from it. Nature taught them well: choose strength, align with power, seek security. And so in times of war, famine, or chaos, they look not for compassion, but for protection, not for character, but for capability. This is not cruelty, this is biology. But it is also the beginning of a man's awakening, because once he sees the pattern, that his worth is conditional, that his love is transactional, that his suffering is invisible, he has two choices: collapse in resentment or rise in clarity. The wise man chooses clarity. He no longer gives blindly, he gives with purpose. He no longer begs for appreciation. He cultivates self-respect. He no longer sacrifices everything for the illusion of love. He sacrifices only for what is aligned with his values. In this awakening, the man becomes untouchable, not because he is heartless, but because he is no longer manipulated by the promise of affection. He realizes women may thrive on his struggle, but he thrives when he owns it. And that is the paradox. That is the warning. That is the path. There is a deep silence that follows a man's efforts, not because they go unnoticed, but because they are expected. From the moment he becomes aware of the world, a man is told, directly or indirectly, that he must earn his place. He must prove himself. He must become worthy of love, not through being, but through doing, not by existing, but by achieving. This is the unwritten contract of masculinity, and Arthur Schopenhauer, long before modern society evolved, saw this pattern embedded in the very fabric of nature. He warned us, the relationship between man and woman is not as romantic as we like to believe. It is strategic. It is instinctual. It is shaped more by nature's demands than by our ideals. While men fall in love with emotion, women, biologically, are drawn to strength, stability, and survival. And because of this, Many women unconsciously thrive when a man struggles to meet their needs, to secure their attention, to prove his value in a world that only remembers the winners. It is not that women are cruel, it is that nature is indifferent, and nature built women to survive, not to sympathize. A man breaks his back to support a family. He sacrifices his dreams to provide. He suffers in silence, believing that his pain is proof of love, that if he gives enough, he will be chosen, that if he becomes useful enough, he will be safe from abandonment. But many men learn too late. Love that is built on utility disappears when that utility ends. And in that moment, when the provider becomes the burden, when the strong man shows weakness, he often finds himself alone. Because no one told him his worth should not come from how much he can endure for others. It should come from how deeply he respects himself. So he must awaken, not in anger, not in hatred, but in truth. He must stop asking, "Why doesn't she see what I've done for her?" and start asking, "Why have I tied my identity to sacrifice?" Yes, women may thrive on a man's struggle, but that doesn't mean he must be consumed by it. Yes, society may only value him when he produces, but that doesn't mean he must lose his soul in the process. He must reclaim the power of choosing himself, to become grounded, to become intentional, to become unbreakable, not because he avoids pain, but because he transforms it. Because a man who understands Schopenhauer's warning is no longer desperate for validation. He is no longer confused by shifting affections. He is no longer enslaved to the illusion of unconditional love. He becomes calm. He becomes precise. He becomes free. And freedom for a man begins the moment he stops begging to be chosen and starts choosing who he will become. So to every man listening, struggle, yes. Endure, yes. Build, yes. But do it with awareness, with honor, with a code. Don't fall for the illusion that pain alone earns you love. Let your pain teach you how to love yourself first, so no one can use it against you again. You were not born to be used. You were born to stand. And if this message awakened something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, remember who you are, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because here, we don't just talk, we awaken.